From orbit, Taraxis Prime was a graveyard of fire and static. The Velcor called it cleansing. The few who survived called it something else. The day silence screamed. Ash rained sideways over the broken dome of New Cascadia, once a proud Terran colony. Now it lay in jagged, blackened ruin, glass towers turned to skeletal spires, parks to scorched dirt, rivers to steam. Across the ruined cityscape, Velcor drones hummed through dust clouds like vultures, scanning for heat signatures. Nothing should have survived the planetary bombardment, nothing human, until something moved. Beneath a fractured transit tunnel, a pile of debris shuddered. Metal screeched. A mechanical arm twitched upward, pushing against 2 tons of collapsed ferrocrete. Then, a gasp, ragged, human, Galen Rourke, clawed his way up from the pit, one shattered breath at a time. Blood streaked down his face from a gash above the temple. His left arm hung limp, bones grinding. A rebreather flickered against his jawline, broken, sparking. His body screamed for rest. He ignored it. He had no choice. Above, the sky pulsed orange, as Velcor cruisers slid into low orbit, harvesting what little was left. Their anti-personnel dropships floated like chrome insects, each one bristling with turrets. They weren't just exterminating, they were erasing. His comlink hissed, static, dead. Everyone on the resistance net was gone, everyone but him. He limped forward, dragging his shattered rifle behind him like a shadow. At the edge of the collapsed tunnel, a Velcor patrol skimmer hovered silently, its crew dismounted and scanning the wreckage. Too close, too many. Galen ducked behind a scorched transit pod. Smoke rose from the ground, sulfuric and blinding, but it was cover. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a pulse mine, half crushed but blinking. One press, one charge. He didn't have a plan. He had a habit. Survive. Fight. Hurt them back. He counted breaths. 3, 2, 1. The pulse mine whined, detonating in a burst of violet light that shorted every circuit within 20 meters. The skimmer dropped like a stone. One Velcor soldier screamed, his exosuit locked up mid-motion as he toppled into a crater. Galen moved before they could react. He grabbed a shock baton from the fallen soldier, slammed it into the chest plate of another, and twisted. Electricity danced. The alien convulsed and fell, but there were 3 more. The nearest one raised a plasma rifle. Galen hurled the spent mine casing into the alien's face and dove. The shot tore through the air, grazing his side with searing heat. He hit the ground hard and didn't get up fast enough. A second Velcor loomed over him, claws bared, mandibles wide. Galen rolled and pulled something from his boot, a flare knife. He jammed it upward into the creature's throat and activated the charge. The alien's neck ignited from within. Its scream was a liquid gurgle. The last Velcor backed off, warbling something into its comms. Retreating. Coward. Galen stood over the corpse, chest heaving, skin blistering. The wind blew ash into his mouth. His body trembled, but his eyes stayed sharp. He took a rifle from the dead, searched the wreckage, found rations, water, a sliver of hope. Then he saw it, etched into a shard of a broken resistance helmet. Never forget Earth. He gripped the shard, slid it into his chest rig like a talisman. That night, the Velcor commander received an urgent report. Single human survivor encountered. Patrol squad eliminated. Subject presumed armed, trained, and hostile. Identity unknown. The commander laughed. Send more. 12 if you must. What can one human do? But beneath the ruined sky, Galen Rourke looked up at the passing cruisers. He whispered, not to them, but to himself. You should have made sure I was dead. And then he vanished into the smoke. The Velcor commander watched the playback again, frame by frame of his patrol squad dying. No enemies visible, just one shadow, one man, then screaming. It wasn't a skirmish, the tech whispered. It was a message. A week had passed since the failed sweep of Sector 19, and still no trace of the human. The Velcor Empire didn't tolerate ghosts. They made examples of them. Now, a new force descended. The Carcass Blades, elite alien hunters bred for extermination. Silent, ruthless, augmented beyond natural form. 10 of them were dispatched, each equipped with psionic tracking visors, cloaked thermal armor, and neural-linked rifles. They didn't speak as they landed near the cratered edge of New Cascadia. They didn't need to. They weren't here to capture. They were here to end the Echo. Galen Rourke crouched under a half-collapsed bridge, mud caked to his arms, heart pounding low and steady. He'd seen the dropships from 5 clicks out. These weren't standard patrols. They were hunting him. Personally. He tapped his visor. Power, 12%. Comms, dead. Blood, leaking. But he smiled anyway. They were still afraid. The first Carcass died without a sound. He had split off from the others to sweep a sunken substation. As he passed through a shattered maintenance hatch, the floor collapsed, intentionally weakened, dropping him into a pit lined with repurposed Velcor mine spikes. His scream was brief. The others only found a boot. Galen had been watching. 1. Down. 9 to go. The second and third fell minutes later. Caught in an electrified tangle of power cables Galen had rigged across a storm drain. Their exosuits overloaded, fused, and cooked them from the inside. The fourth survived long enough to trigger an alert. Enemy is mobile. Adaptive, uses scavenged tech, full predator profile, recommend. The feed went dead inside a ruined comms tower. Galen moved like vapor, staying low, barely audible, every step calculated. His face was bruised, coated in ash and sweat, but his eyes never blinked. He wasn't running anymore. He was learning them. They relied too much on gear. They expected humans to panic. They thought numbers meant something. By nightfall, only 4. Carcass remained. They activated thermal sweeps, scanned every crevice, triangulated every anomaly. They found dozens of false signals, decoys Galen had set using heated metal plates and fragments of Velcor bioweapons. Frustrated, they formed a tight diamond pattern, closing ranks. That's when Galen stopped hiding. He struck like lightning, dropping, a flash charge from a rooftop into their center, disorienting the group for 2 seconds. That was all he needed. He leapt into the smoke and drove a serrated spike into the back of one Carcass's neck, severing its neural spine. Before the others could react, he vanished into the mist again. The remaining 3 opened fire blindly, rounds cutting through fog and rubble. One of them turned and screamed as a plasma charge detonated behind him. His own grenade turned against him and duct taped to a live power cell. 2 left. The last pair fled. Full retreat. No mission was worth this. Not against that. They didn't make it 50 meters. One stepped on a tripwire that triggered a homemade concussion bomb. The blast sent him flying into a collapsed mag train rail where jagged steel impaled him. The final Carcass collapsed to his knees, bleeding, breathing erratically, his weapon gone. Then, footsteps. Slow. Measured. Out of the smoke walked Galen, face shadowed beneath a scavenged Velcor rebreather. One eye swollen shut, covered in grime, blood, ash, and fury. He didn't speak. He just held up the soldier's own rifle and pulled the trigger. Across the stars, Velcor intelligence received the field report. 10 Carcass blades lost. Enemy used 0 reinforcements. Unknown, human-designated Class X threat level. Local units refusing deployment into Sector 19. And at the bottom of the report, subject codename, the Echo. Meanwhile, Galen knelt beside a ruined transmitter. He pulled the cracked data core from the final soldier's gear. It was Imperial, encrypted. He hooked it to his jury-rigged tablet and smiled as lines of Velcor script flickered across the screen. Fleet movements, command names, supply routes. Thanks for the gifts, he muttered. The war wasn't over. It was just starting to get interesting. The Velcor Empire had weapons, fleets, and thousands of years of conquest. But now their command center repeated the same question in every encrypted transmission. Why can't we kill one human? The command ship Dread Obsidian hung in low orbit over Taraxis Prime, blotting out the sun like a scar across the sky. Inside its war room, High Strategist Kavrak reviewed the Carcass helmet feed frame by frame. 10 elite assassins, each one slaughtered in less than 24 hours. No allies. No advanced gear, just one man. Kavrak slammed a clawed fist into the table. How? How does one Terran ghost shatter our elite? A younger officer, voice trembling, offered, He's adapting. He's not just surviving. He's learning us. Then burn the sector, Kavrak growled. Level everything. We've already tried. Twice. The strategist's 4 eyes narrowed. Then we starve him. Down on Taraxis, Galen Rourke moved silently through the shell of an old skyport terminal. The wind whistled through shattered glass and twisted beams. His ribs were bruised, one knee swollen, but his mind was razor sharp. His makeshift tablet blinked with stolen Velcor data, fleet frequencies, supply nodes, and, most important, a nearby logistics convoy landing within 48 hours. It was a long shot. But he needed supplies, comms gear, and, if he got lucky, a way off-world. That meant getting closer to the heart of enemy operations than ever before. He watched a surveillance drone pass overhead. The Velcor had tripled patrols. They were sealing. Escape routes, mining tunnels, blocking mountain paths. They weren't just hunting, they were trapping. Galen adjusted his cloak, the one he'd stitched from camouflage netting and scavenged fabric. He moved like smoke, one with the debris. Every footstep placed with surgical precision. Every shadow, a potential escape, but even ghosts leave traces. The Velcor's next move wasn't brute force, it was bait, a fake distress signal broadcasted in English. This is Lieutenant Kira Miles, Terran Resistance, injured, trapped, coordinates attached. Galen froze when he heard it. Static-laced, half-broken, but the voice was right. Familiar. Kira had been his squad mate. He'd watched her ship spiral down in the first wave of the attack. Alive? After all this? Hope was a cruel weapon. He checked the location. A collapsed hydro station, far too exposed, far too clean. It was a trap. He went anyway. By the time he reached the hydro station, night had swallowed the sky, and the voice was still broadcasting. Looped, faked. He approached from a cliffside pipe, crawling through freezing sludge to reach. An upper catwalk. His eyes scanned every surface. No movement. Then, click, a laser tripwire, barely visible in the moonlight. Galen froze, listened, waited. There, a whisper of movement below. Multiple life signs. 4, 5, too slow for. Carcass. Too coordinated for drones. Imperial black suits. Human-augmented interrogators. They didn't kill. They captured, and they were circling. Galen triggered his trap first. A snapped wire released a cascade of crushed conduit pipes down a stairwell, creating a diversion. Simultaneously, he dropped a sonic decoy from the catwalk above. It screamed, like a plasma grenade about to explode. The black suits broke formation instantly, and that's when he struck. He dropped behind one, drove a shock spike into the base of its skull, twisted, then rolled into cover as the others opened fire. Rounds sparked across the wall where he'd just been. His cloak smoked. One bullet grazed his shoulder. He gritted his teeth and flung an EMP canister down the stairwell. 3 of the black suits locked up instantly, twitching in their exosuits. He fired 2 clean shots. Head, chest, down. The last one lunged at him, blade drawn, too fast, augmented, but Galen ducked, dropped his rifle, and pulled a shard of glass steel from his boot, jamming it under the enemy's chin. Crack. Dead. The room fell silent. Smoke drifted in lazy spirals around him. Then, "Nice to know I still draw a crowd," he muttered, breathing hard. On one of the corpses, he found a working Velcor field tablet. He hacked it with a cracked encryption spike. What he saw made his blood run cold. A map of the surrounding sectors, his known movements, traps set, checkpoints reinforced. Escape routes burned. They were herding him, not to kill, but to corner, and at the center of the web, a facility buried beneath the old wasteland. Designation, Nexus Black. "That's where you want me," Galen whispered. "Then that's exactly where I'm going." No one's ever escaped Nexus Black. Then again, no one's ever broken in. Until now. The facility was buried beneath kilometers of irradiated wasteland, shielded by a crust of scorched earth and static storms that fried unshielded drones. The Velcor didn't advertise Nexus Black's existence. It was where rebels disappeared, where experiments screamed in the dark. Now one man was walking toward it, wounded, half-starved, and dragging a stolen Velcor field pack behind him like a trophy. Galen. Rourke had a plan. A stupid, reckless, beautiful plan, and it started with getting caught. He let the outer patrol spot him. He limped, hunched, rifle slung low, heat signature burning bright against the cold terrain. Within minutes, 2 atmospheric cruisers intercepted. He didn't resist as black-armored Velcor dropped from the sky, shouting orders in a guttural dialect. He raised his hands. "You finally got me," he said, smirking. "Took you long enough." They slammed him into a containment pod, strapped down his limbs, scanned his DNA 3 times. The commanding officer stared at him like he was staring at a myth, like Galen shouldn't exist. "The Empire has questions for you." "Better ask fast," Galen said. "You've got less time than you think." The pod descended through layers of rock and steel. The deeper it went, the colder it became. Galen counted the seconds. At minute 7, the pod stopped. Welcome to Nexus Black. The doors hissed open into a facility that didn't look like a prison. It looked like a graveyard for science. Cryotanks lined the walls. Some held humans. Others didn't. Shattered ones dripped black fluid. Some of them were still screaming. He was taken through narrow halls lined with cameras and automated gun turrets. Everything smelled like ozone and chemicals. Too clean. Too careful. They knew who he was. They were afraid. Dr. Iliax, a skeletal Velcor scientist with surgical gloves that never seemed to come off, leaned close to Galen's bruised face in the interrogation chair. "We've studied your kind for generations. You're violent, but predictable." "Then why am I here?" Galen asked. Iliax didn't blink. "Because you're not predictable. You are escalation incarnate." He waved a hand. A holo display flickered on. Video footage, a summary of Galen's actions. 10 Carcas eliminated, 17 patrols gone, supply lines shattered, dozens of Velcor units refusing to enter the dead zones where he walked. "We built empires, across galaxies. And yet you, one damaged Terran, broke our logic." "You ever think maybe it was never your galaxy?" Galen asked, eyes burning. "Just one you stole." Iliax's voice dropped. "We're going to take you apart, human. Every cell, every reflex. We will make more of you. Better, controlled." They didn't notice the crack in the ceiling camera. Didn't know Galen had let himself be captured with a tracking implant stitched into his shoulder. Velcor tech. Reprogrammed to transmit one thing. Coordinates, 1 floor above the lab. Chaos. Erupted. A shuttle, stolen weeks ago and believed lost in the wastelands, crashed through the landing pad gates. On autopilot, packed with reactive fusion charges Galen had armed from salvaged ordnance. The blast knocked out a third of the facility's power grid. Alarms howled, systems rebooted, and Galen moved. He dislocated his thumb, slipped free from the restraints, ripped the drip feed from his neck, and headbutted the nearest technician hard enough to break bone. Before the second guard could react, Galen was on him, wrestling his sidearm, elbowing his jaw, firing once. Headshot. He scooped up the scientist's tablet and triggered the override on the cryo chambers. Every single one. The lights flickered. Tanks began to crack open. Humans, hybrids, failed clones, all of them gasping for air, panicked, desperate, and Galen, limping, bloodied, was shouting orders. "If you can walk, follow the red lights. If you can't, crawl!" A mutated hybrid snarled at him. He leveled his pistol. "Try me!" It backed off. Sirens blared overhead. Security bots activated and rolled into the lower levels, but they weren't prepared for hundreds of rogue experiments tearing down hallways in every direction. Amid the bedlam, Galen found the central core. It was armored, locked, impossible to crack from the outside, so he planted a stolen thermal charge directly into the coolant line. "No one should have this tech," he whispered. "Especially not you." Then he ran. Behind him, Nexus Black began to cook from the inside. Cryo-tanks bursting, systems failing, conduits overheating. By the time the upper levels collapsed, Galen had already reached the service tunnel. Half burned. Shot in the leg. Smiling anyway. Outside, the cold wind of the wasteland hit him in the face like a promise. He didn't just escape Nexus Black, he destroyed it. And now the galaxy would feel the ripple. By the time the Velcor realized what had happened at Nexus Black, it was already burning, and one human was walking out of the smoke. The wasteland skies glowed amber and ash as Nexus Black collapsed into itself. The facility's heat signature, registered as a false supervolcano eruption from orbit. The Velcor scrambled ships to investigate. But by then, Galen Rourke was gone. He'd slipped into the underrock caverns, a hollow network of tunnels once used by ancient miners, now forgotten. And beneath the distant howling of sirens, the only sound was his labored breath and the steady drip of blood from his thigh wound. He was half dead, but still moving, still thinking, and more dangerous than ever. Up in orbit, the dread Obsidian watched. The chaos unfold in real time. High Strategist Kavrak stared at the ruin of Nexus Black through a trembling lens. One man. He brought down our most secure facility, released hundreds of test subjects, destroyed years of genetic research. He turned to his subcommanders. There are no more elite squads. There is no more escalation. From now on, we only speak of survival. "And the human?" one officer asked. "He is no longer prey," Kavrak said. "He is a force of nature." In the depths below the storm-blasted rocks, Galen found refuge. An old Terran forward scout shelter, long abandoned. Dusty emergency rations, a comms array. He activated the antenna. It hissed and sputtered. Static. Then, "Rourke, that you?" The voice came through in fragments. "Female. Shaky. Kira?" he rasped. "You blew up Nexus Black. That was you?" "They faked your signal," Galen said, slumping to the ground. "I followed anyway." That's how they baited. The last of the resistance. You were never supposed to make it out. And yet, Kira fed him coordinates. A cell of surviving human fighters, hiding in orbit, scavenging across shattered moons and wrecks. Barely a dozen left. "We've been watching. You've become a myth, Galen." "I'm not interested in stories," he said. "Then how about revenge?" 3 days later, Galen limped across a broken asteroid field into the Resistance hideout, a shattered cargo hauler retrofitted into a covert station. They looked at him like they were seeing a ghost. Rourke didn't look like a man anymore. He looked like the reason Velcor mothers would warn their hatchlings about the dark. They patched his wounds. They debriefed. And then Kira showed him the real target, Project Halo Heart, the crown jewel of the Velcor Empire. a planet-sized relay station buried inside a dead star's orbit. Not a weapon, a beacon. It sent commands across the Empire, synchronized drone. Fleets activated sleeper units, shut it down, and the Velcor war machine would collapse in days, but no one had ever gotten close. "We don't need to blow it up," Galen said, eyes scanning blueprints. "We just need to reprogram it." "To do what?" Kira asked. "Send a message to every enslaved species, every outpost, every world." He leaned forward. "Tell them Earth is done hiding." But before they could move, the Velcor hit back, hard. Spy drones found the resistance. Hideout. Within hours, hunter-killers dropped from orbit, drilling straight through the asteroid's hull. The station screamed as the vacuum tore decks apart. Galen held the breech doors closed with his bare hands long enough for two others to escape. His skin burned from the freezing air, but he didn't stop. He had one last thing to do. He dove into the command room, slammed the emergency controls, and uploaded the Halo Heart worm, a program he'd stolen from Nexus Black. Data raced through the system. Velcor defenses pinged. Not fast enough. The virus latched onto Halo Heart's beacon stream, encrypted, replicated, hidden. Within 9 minutes, it would rewrite the signal across the entire Empire. Galen watched the countdown. 59, 8, 37, 55. The walls shook. An explosion ripped through the corridor behind him. Kira's voice buzzed through the intercom. "Galen, get out! We've got a shuttle!" "Too late," he muttered. "They'll track the transmission. I have to stay long enough to make sure it spreads." No, not like this. He looked at the blinking terminal. The worm was working. "Tell them," he said. "Tell everyone that one human wasn't a warning. We're just the beginning." As the Velcor breached the command room, Galen turned toward them, standing tall despite the blood, the burns, the broken bones. "Still standing," he growled. "And you're still afraid." He pressed one last button and smiled. The Velcor built Halo Heart to control the galaxy. They never imagined it would be hijacked by a dying human on fire. The pod screamed through space like a meteor with vengeance in its core. Inside, Galen Rourke's body was locked in a temperature, suit barely holding against the radiation storm. His heartbeat was erratic, his blood half frozen. Every red warning light in the capsule was flashing. But his eyes still locked forward. Ahead, through the fiery swirl of stellar debris, the cursed orbit of Halo Heart awaited, a fortress embedded in the black corona of a dying star. Giant solar wings shimmered in distortion, absorbing the madness around it. Its surface pulsed with control signals, broadcasting control over millions of Velcor war machines across the galaxy. It was a brain, a god, a tether, and it was about to be hijacked by a single human. Back at the Resistance outpost, Kira and her team watched the telemetry scroll. "He's in the death cone," someone whispered. "That pod wasn't made for a sundive," another muttered. Kira said nothing. She stared at the screen as signal after signal dropped, and then one pulse held steady. Rourke was still alive. Inside the storm, on the obsidian dreadnought orbiting the system, panic surged. "Unauthorized. Signal entering Halo Heart's range. Impossible. That zone is impassable to organic life." Kavrak stormed into the bridge, mandibles flared wide. "What is it?" "A pod. Human make. It's broadcasting nothing. But something's riding the signal." They zoomed in. On screen, the pod was tearing apart, armor plates sloughing, off in molten waves. Radiation warped the lens, but in one split-second frame they caught an image, a human face, grim, smiling. "It's him," Kavrak breathed. "It's Rourke." Inside Halo Heart, the AI mind registered the anomaly, a non-Velcor signature, a corrupted code spike, slipping past fail-safes, slithering through roots of the system like a virus with purpose. "Hello again," Rourke muttered, voice barely audible. He was sitting in the shattered remains of the pod, Half of his suit melted, breathing from a cracked tank, fingertips fused to the console interface. The worm program from Nexus Black had done its job. It was inside. But now came the final step. Manual authentication. Pain exploded down his arms as he jacked directly into the interface, burning his nerves to ash. "You wanted control," he whispered. "Let's see how you like it when someone talks back." The entire Velcor command network glitched. Every drone, every ship, every AI relay station. For a fraction of a second, they all paused. Then, the message began. A beacon, riding the very same command wavelength once used to enslave entire species, was sent outward, not a shutdown, a broadcast, to every world, every system. A voice, human and defiant, echoed across every screen, every speaker, every neural link. "This is Galen Rourke, human. You thought Earth was forgotten, that we were broken, that we'd kneel. You were wrong. We remember. Your labs, your minds, your executions. Now you will remember us. We are not prey. We are the storm you built over centuries and forgot to fear. Run." On dozens of worlds, Velcor control systems collapsed. Oppressed species, long held in place by digital chains, rose in unison. AI warships turned on their masters. Entire colonies declared rebellion. Slave nodes self-destructed. The Empire trembled. The Obsidian Hunt units on Earth lost targeting capability. Their eyes went dark. Their blades refused commands. Kavrak watched the galaxy ignite from his dreadnoughts. Bridge, antennae twitching with terror. "Shut it down!" he howled. "We can't!" cried the technicians. "He didn't just take Halo Heart, he became it!" Inside the burning relay, Rourke slumped forward, body beyond saving, but his mind interfaced, spread, echoing. Everywhere the Velcor turned, he was already there. "This is what fear feels like," his voice whispered in their command channels. "You gave me nothing left to lose. And now I've given your galaxy a reason to fight." His body died, but the signal didn't stop. Not for hours. Not until the Velcor Empire collapsed in on itself, choked by the ghost of a man they couldn't kill in life. The Velcor Empire fell in silence, not with a war cry, but with a whisper, spoken in a human voice they couldn't erase. Across the galaxy, smoke rose from command towers once thought eternal. The Velcor flag worlds, untouchable for centuries, now crackled with rebellion. Systems that had only ever known compliance were waking like a body shaking off paralysis. And in the void where Halo Heart once pulsed, nothing remained. No station, no pod, no body. But the echo of his voice still crackled, through back channels. No matter how many beacons the Velcor destroyed, it returned again and again. "We are not your shadows anymore. We are your reckoning." On the bridge of the Resistance cruiser Iron Wake, Kira Vance watched the star charts update in real time. Whole sectors blinked red. Velcor collapse confirmed. She didn't smile. She couldn't. "Anything?" she asked the comms tech. "Any trace?" No heat signatures. No capsule debris. Nothing. Galen's gone. A long silence. Then, "Not gone," Kira said quietly. "He won." But not everyone was celebrating. In the deep zones of space, far beyond the reach of liberated systems, a Velcor vessel drifted, lights dim, cloaked in static. Inside, High Strategist Kavrak stared at the floor of the war chamber. "A single human," he hissed, mandibles twitching. "One. Not a fleet, not a god. Just one." The surviving generals murmured behind him. They wanted vengeance, but the Empire was splintered. Entire sectors had seceded. Their war factories had gone dark, automated systems corrupted by Rourke's signal worm, their drone legions inert, their soldiers doubting. "We are not defeated," growled General Ishak. "We are reorganizing." But Kavrak knew the truth. He didn't destroy us with fire, he said softly. He infected us with belief. On the planet Draumir, once a prison moon, now a rising symbol of resistance, a crowd gathered around a massive carved monument. At its center, a metal sculpture of a figure in scorched armor, one fist raised to the sky, the other holding a broken Velcor control rod. The plaque read, "He made them bleed. He gave us back our names." Former slaves, rebels, and exiled leaders stood together under one flag, and in every chant, every speech, one name echoed louder than any other. Rourke, Rourke, Rourke. Back aboard Iron Wake, Kira opened a sealed file Galen had given her before his suicide run. It was encrypted only to be accessed if he didn't return. Inside, a single message. Recorded in low light, Galen sat in the pod, face burned, eyes tired, but clear. If you're seeing this, I made it. Not home, obviously, but far enough to finish the job. He paused, exhaled slow. I didn't do this to be a hero. I did it because I knew what they'd do if we didn't stop them. I'm not asking you to remember me. I'm asking you to remember what we are. We survive. We endure. And when pushed hard enough, we push back harder. A final smile. One human, one empire. Guess who's still standing? The screen faded to black, but deep in the void, something stirred. A forgotten part of the Halo Heart relay, buried in the event horizon's edge, still flickered with life. A single backup consciousness, fragmented, running at 0.2% capacity, Galen's last brainwave imprint. System, Rourke Core, still echoing. And on a newly freed world, a child picked up a cracked Velcor drone head from the ruins. It sparked, once, and a voice whispered, "We are your storm." The child looked up, wide-eyed. "Mama, who said that?" The mother turned, eyes shining. A human. The one who didn't run. They erased his body, but his defiance became a species. Across a galaxy once shackled by Velcor algorithms and iron, a quiet but relentless movement had begun. Entire star systems rewrote their laws. Slave worlds turned their labor camps into academies of resistance. Drones that once hunted civilians now stood guard over peaceful fires, repurposed by human code. No one remembered the names of the Velcor kings, but they remembered Rourke, not as a martyr, not even as a soldier, but as the ghost that changed everything. On Earth, the skies were clear again. The orbital bombardments had stopped. The atmosphere, once bruised with plasma clouds, was slowly healing. Cities had begun reconstruction, not with committees, but with volunteers. And in the ruins of old Chicago, a museum was being built, not of the war, but of the turning point. Its centerpiece was a scorched, partially reconstructed capsule, the same one Rourke had launched toward Halo Heart. Children walked past it wide-eyed. Veterans touched it in silence. Some still didn't believe the story, but the signal still pulsed faintly from its core, proof that the impossible had happened. Meanwhile, in the deep black beyond known space, a Velcor refugee fleet drifted, leaderless, visionless, afraid. On. The flagship, Kavrak, still held command, but his command was hollow. His generals no longer barked. His soldiers no longer saluted. They whispered. They remembered how Rourke had turned their pride into fear, their domination into dust. They remembered the way their unstoppable empire had stuttered and choked the moment a human rewired the impossible, and in their dreams, they heard his voice. "You built a cage too perfect," the ghost said, "so I burned the lock from inside." Back in Draumir's resistance hall, Kira stood before a galaxy map flickering, with updates, new alliances, trade routes, free governments forming, but something else, faint pings, fragments, echoes of Halo Heart's AI matrix, splintered pieces of Rourke's mind that were still weaving through abandoned Velcor networks. Every few days a signal would intercept an execution order and cancel it. A drone assault would begin and halt mid-strike, suddenly rerouted. No one had officially confirmed it. But in whispers, the newly freed citizens had a name for it, the Firewall Ghost. Kira reviewed the data logs alone. No living human could have survived that sun dive. Every simulation said the same. But this wasn't about survival. It was about transcendence, and Rourke, reckless, brilliant Rourke, had never played by the rules of survival. "He didn't die," she muttered to herself. "He rewrote what it meant to win." Her comms officer pinged. New override detected on a Velcor exoship. AI offline. Target rescued. "Let me guess," she replied. "Signal signature, Rourke pattern." She smiled, but her eyes were wet. On a backwater moon called Tenek Fu, a small outpost was attacked by rogue Velcor loyalists. The survivors huddled inside an old ore silo, waiting for death. Then, without warning, the attackers' drone units stopped. Their targeting systems scrambled. Their own ships locked them inside and launched them into deep space. As the dust cleared, a nearby console sparked. A message appeared. "Next time, bring cookies." Signed, GR. And so the myth grew. 1,000,000 versions, 1,000 whispered tales. Rourke lived in every disabled drone. Rourke guided rebel fleets through blind jumps. Rourke haunted Velcor AI cores like a digital poltergeist. But to the ones who knew him, the real Galen Rourke wasn't a ghost. He was human, flawed, brave, furious, kind. And in his final act, he taught the galaxy one simple truth. Never mistake quiet for weakness. Never mistake one human for alone. The final monument was placed on the edge of the Andari Rift, where no empire dared patrol. No flags, no guards, just a simple message carved in obsidian and left to float in space. Here ended the Velcor Empire, and began something greater. Humanity stood alone, and the galaxy followed. The end.